Well, we did, of course, ask to speak to the relevant government ministers, but no one was available. With me is Labour's shadow Brexit secretary, Keir Starmer, and the Conservative MP and Brexit supporter, Dominic Raab. You want David Davis, who's the Brexit man you're up against, to come to Parliament to explain what's been going on.
Yes, I've asked him to come to Parliament and to make a statement because we've got the fact of Sir Ivan's resignation, and I'm glad there's been an appointment made in the last hour or so. But then there are the underlying reasons that he set out. And in particular, I think the concern that he says there's no negotiating objectives agreed yet, and that the team isn't properly resourced, the negotiating EU team, and structures and roles haven't been organised. Now, obviously, it takes a bit of time to get this done, but we're now 10 to 11 weeks away. So I think the government's actually been silent on this, apart from, as I say, the fact of the resignation. The substance of the charge needs to be answered. And I think David Davis needs to come to Parliament and reassure not just the opposition and Parliament, but the country that there actually is a plan. They do know what they're doing, and that they've got the right structures and teams in place because time is running out.
Well, one of the problems is that Sir Ivan's letter seems to indicate, or email, seems to suggest that there's a grave absence of a plan.
Well, I think this is real. I mean, we've been pressing for a plan for some months. Now, I am sympathetic to the argument that the government needs to get this right. There are difficult judgment calls. But we're now in January. We've got weeks left. There has to be a plan. We're not even in the territory of whether it should be disclosed. There's a basic question. Do you actually know now what your negotiating objectives are? And that's why David Davis really has to come to the House and answer that question.
But there is a profound difficulty, isn't there? I mean, there is an institution, the Foreign Office, who had been charged with trying to make the European Union work in Britain's interests for 4 decades, and now suddenly being asked to unpick it. It's hardly surprising there's a bit of a hiccup on the way.
Well, I wouldn't describe this as a hiccup along the way. I mean, this resignation coming as it does weeks before the negotiations start. But there is a deeper issue here. When I was Director of Public Prosecutions, I had to make difficult decisions. I needed challenge, and the civil service and the excellent civil service advice helped make good decisions. And I think it's a great shame if there's any sense of pushing to one side those that would want to put in relevant and robust challenge to what any government wants to do. We've got to be very careful on this.
Do you have confidence in the appointment of Sir Tim?
Yeah, I think he's an interesting choice. He's a criminologist by background, having been ambassador to Russia and the Ukraine, and that's probably about the right skill set to taking on and going into bat with Brussels. His reputation as well is one of a fixer, not particularly weighed down by the kind of EU institutional position that the Foreign Office is reputed to have, rightly or wrongly.
Although he's worked very happily in it.
In some of the aspects like security and certain other areas, but that's not been his bread and butter for X number of years. My view is actually it's a savvy appointment. He'll bring some fresh thinking, and actually what we now need to do is row behind the Brexit team, because what everyone wants to see watching this show is a united team delivering for the whole country.
You see him therefore as a man with a plan?
Well, you don't expect your ambassador in Brussels to be the one to come up with a plan. But the truth is, we already know a huge amount about what Britain wants to achieve. It wants to give effect to the referendum.
Oh, no, we all know what they want to achieve, but we have no idea what on earth the plan is for achieving it. And neither do you.
Well, I know very clearly, because the Prime Minister set out, that we're going to take back control over immigration. We're not going to be subject to free movement rules. We want to be a global leader in free trade, so that means we don't want the EU negotiating our free trade agreements. We said we're coming out of the ECJ jurisdiction, but as Keir said, and everyone knows, you don't disclose the detail of your hand before the 2 years of Brexit poker has even got underway.
Well, you don't lose your man on the job the moment just before he's about to get on with it. Why should we have any confidence at all that poor Sir Tim Barrow won't go the same way?
Well, the remarkable thing about what you've shown and what Sir Keir said so far is that you've not mentioned the 2 reasons that in his letter, which I have here, Sir Ivan gave for stepping down.
Yes, he actually indicates very strongly he was pushed out by number 10.
No, he doesn't say that.
He does. If you read between the lines, you've got a lot.
So you want to read between the lines. I'll take it at face value. He says, first of all, I was stepping down in October anyway. Shouldn't the person who completes the Brexit negotiations also begin them?
Well, look, that's been the case for months, and that could have been fixed ages ago. Somebody could have said that's what's going to happen.
So, John,
no such thing happened.
You're not disputing the politicians. You're saying that actually he's not being straight.
No. It's perfectly obvious that was not the decision.
But what he says, reason 1, I think the person that begins the negotiations should complete them. Reason 2 is that my deputy and his deputy, or the next ambassador, Sir Tim's deputy, ought to be in place, and the new ambassador who's going to see the negotiations through should have a hand in picking the deputy. So you don't have a division between...
You've had 6 months to sort that out. It wasn't been done because there was no plan.
It was his choice.
I'm wondering what you make of this.
Well, Dominic is tiptoeing around the real issue, which is there isn't a plan. It isn't good enough anymore to simply have 4 or 5 half sentences that are pretty meaningless as a set of objectives. And if the negotiating team don't even at this stage know the objectives, that is a very serious concern. There's the secondary question of what can be put into the public domain. I think the government can and should say what's their basic position on the single market, what's the basic position on the customs union, are they in favour of paying in, and if so, how much? Are they in favour of transitional arrangements? These are big-ticket items. They must have answers to those questions.
But that's very simple questions.
This is not the detail.
Single market. Where are you on single market? Why don't they say?
So, John, let me answer in my own terms. First of all, I've given you the 2 reasons that Sir Ivan gave up front, first page of the letter. Secondly, on coming to the House of Commons, I'm surprised Keir wants to come to the House of Commons. Every time he does, the splits on the Labour side are much greater than on the Tory side. 23 rebelled against Jeremy Corbyn's position. Keir wants to see the free movement rules ripped up. He's not got the backing of the leader of the Labour Party.
Honestly, Dominic, with 11 or 12 weeks to go, to start pointing to the opposition, the real negotiations for the future of this country are about to begin. That is a huge responsibility on the government, and it's no good you simply pointing at anybody else. Come up with the answers.
There, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it. Keir Starmer, Dominic Raab, thank you very much indeed for coming in. We watch this space.